Hey guys, Greg here. You know, the price of vinyl has gone crazy in the last couple of years. So much good vinyl is getting so expensive. Are there any good deals left in vinyl? Well, as a professor of cheap and crappy vinyl, I'm here to tell you that there are great bargains still available out there if you know where to look and you know what you're looking for. Specifically, let's talk about thrift stores. Thrift stores in LA here, some of the prices have gone up to $3.99 and $4.99 for junky records, but there's still thrift stores that have records for $1 or $2. But is there anything good left at a thrift store? In general, the records people are looking for are not easy to find at thrift stores, right? Let's do a little statistical math survey. Let's say a survey. Are there any classic rock albums to be found at the thrift stores across America? What percentage of thrift stores have decent, top-notch classic rock records sitting on their shelves today? Not very many. If you took the top artists in classic rock, Beatles, Stones, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, who else? Bowie, and 100 of you went out to 100 random thrift stores that are known to carry records, how many of you would come back today with a good, clean copy of a record by Beatles, Stones, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, etc.? Probably very few of you, right? 1 or 2%. 90, 95, 98% of thrift stores just are not stocking these records because they get caught up quickly. Yes, I have found great records like this at thrift stores, but that's 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 chance of scoring a great record. What about other genres? What about jazz? How many thrift stores can you go in today and find a great, high-quality record by Miles, Coltrane, Bill Evans, Chet Baker, just sitting there on the shelf? Yes, you can find jazz records. You can find Herb Alpert. You can find John Clemmer, Chuck Mangione, Kenny G. Might not be jazz. Yes, you can find those records, but quality records, 98% of thrift shops don't have them because they get bought up really quickly. Well, what genre of music can you find at thrift shops in massive amounts for great prices, $1, $2 for classic, great sounding, great performance records? Shall we test this genre thing again? Let's take another genre, and let's take only the best 3 in the genre. Are you ready? Beethoven, Bach, Mozart? That's right, guys. Classical music. You can walk into most thrift shops. Let's do this little test. 100 of you go out to your favorite thrift shops today. How many of you will come back with at least one good quality record from Bach, Beethoven, or Mozart? Good pressing, good performance, masterpieces of music. So that's the answer to today's little survey question. Classical music is the great undervalued opportunity in record collecting that so many of you are missing out on because you just pass those records up. They are sitting there in the thrift stores. Grab them before somebody else does. Literally, thrift stores are full of this type of music because a lot of the stuff the thrift stores get is stuff from people who passed away, and older people may have great collections of classical music. Literally, I go into thrift stores and say, oh, somebody just passed away who had a collection of great, subcategory of classical, like organ music, flute music. There is great classical music out there in thrift stores today. What are you waiting for? What's so great about classical music, you ask? Well, I don't like it. Well, these are the greatest musicians who ever lived, greatest composers who ever lived, great masterpieces. Yeah, Beethoven, he was the Eddie Van Halen of his day. He challenged people to Battle of the Bands type competitions and out-improvised them on spontaneous, off-the-top-of-your-head improvisations. He would do that on a regular basis and always kick everybody's butt. He composed the last, 50-60% of his masterpieces while he was completely deaf. Mozart was composing symphonies since the time he was 4 or 5 years old. Composed 40 of them before he died at age, 36? Etc., etc. I could go on and on. 200-300 years later, we're still celebrating the music of these people, and 200 or 300 years in the future, we will still be celebrating and listening to the music of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. I don't think they're going to be listening to the music of Ed Sheeran in 300 years, or Lizzo, or Harry Styles, Foghat, I think, will still be massive in 300 years, but right up there with Beethoven, Bach, Mozart. Our classical music records such a great value. Greatest composers ever, masterpieces, but great performances by world-class virtuoso musicians. Let's see if I can find an example. Examples, but okay. If you've got a recording contract with Deutsche Grammophon or Sony Classics, that means you are one of the top performers in the world, right? You're a virtuoso. And anybody who graduates from the Juilliard and all those schools, and they can play these complex pieces of music from memory, and they studied their brains out for thousands and thousands of hours. The performance, the recording, the pressings are good. Classical music very often comes in nice plastic inner sleeves. There's one, an original inner sleeve that's plastic lined. It's paper plus plastic. And the Deutsche Grammophon with the tulips, very highly regarded. Beautiful vinyl, beautiful pressings, made in Germany. Comes in a plastic sleeve. Classical music listeners do not beat up their records. They're not throwing these around at parties. They're not scratching. They're listening very carefully on nice systems. So the records are often in pristine shape. Let me go through a quick stack of records. I probably have 300 or 400 records classical that I've got at thrift stores. Almost every classical record in my collection is from a thrift store, $1 or $2. Some of the really crappy ones people have just given me, like this one on the turntable. Crappy in the sense that it's kind of beat up and old. Arturo Toscanini doing Beethoven. Come on. Beethoven 6th. A lot of the records in my collection, the so-called crappy records in my collection, are a result of, hey Greg, I'm going to throw a stack of my parents' records out. Would you like to grab them before they hit the trash can? And I'm like, what time can I be over? I'm on my way. I'm going to give you some records that I've gotten at thrift stores where I actually purchased them with my own real money. Here we go. Bruckner's Third Symphony on Teldec. This is one of my favorite records when I first got CDs. Debussy and Ravel each only composed one string quartet, and I had this on CD back in the early 80s, one of the very first classical CDs I ever had. Then I found it on LP for $1. How cool is that? About Bach doing violin concertos. Christopher Hogwood, Academy of Ancient Music, very well known performer for older music, Baroque style music. And when you see this beautiful filigree type design, you know you've got the Lusso-Lira, if that's how you pronounce it, imprint that specializes in Baroque music. That's a nice record. Bach doing harpsichord music. I don't love this record that much. I love the shiny coat, and Harmonia Mundi is a great label, but this record not my favorite, but beautiful record. Just got it a couple weeks ago. Beethoven. Beethoven's string quartets are among the most important, most complex, most sophisticated pieces of music ever written. He wrote a bunch of quartets, and usually they will put 1 or 2 on an LP. So the Razumovsky Quartet is a famous one, Quartet number 7. This is on the Columbia label. One of the biggest labels, but they are not known for the greatest pressings. And for $1, Mahler, Deutsche Grammophon. Anytime you see this yellow, it's the label Deutsche Grammophon, which is the oldest record label in the world. Humongous record label. German. Claudia Abbado, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, Mahler, Vivaldi. What is Vivaldi doing? String concertos, I think's what that means. Decca label. European. The Europeans, they press great records. That's Schubert, Octet, Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, very well-known ensemble doing chamber music and older music. Here's a very bizarre record. Leonard Bernstein conducts modern composers. Music of our time. Lucas Foss, Gunther Schuller, weird avant-garde modern composers. These records are more valuable because they're rare. You're going to find 1,000 recordings of Beethoven's 5th and Beethoven's 9th. But a rare piece of music like Lucas Foss's, sometimes they're rare because they're not that popular, they're not that good, but rare often means valuable. This is a very ubiquitous label. The Musical Heritage Society, MHS, very plain wrap, dull covers, no artwork. They cranked out tons and tons and tons of records. They're not super highly regarded or highly collectible. That's why they're cheap. And a lot of these are better for playing on my inexpensive, crummy turntable. How about some Beethoven? Sixth Symphony, Arturo Toscanini. Here's one of the weirdest records. This was a giveaway. Someone was getting rid of an old collection. Leonard Bernstein. A lecture series. He had this giant lecture series, Volume 5. Charles Ives, one of my favorite composers. So it's just Bernstein talking about the history of music. I don't think I've even listened to it, but I have it, and it's cool, and it's weird. Bach doing one of his cantatas, which is like a vocal piece. I'm not huge on vocal pieces, but Bach wrote a zillion cantatas, and this is on the cool Telefunken German label. Telefunken also made microphones and stereos. I like having weird old stuff. One of the greatest of all time is the very strange man named Glenn Gould. Child prodigy, enfant terrible, diva, difficult human being to get along with. Glenn Gould's most famous record is, of course, the Goldberg Variations, but he did a lot of piano music on the Columbia label. This is Bach and Beethoven, with Leonard Bernstein conducting. Bach, St. Matthew's Passion. Rick Beato called this one of the top 10 Bach compositions of all time. This is also on the Telefunken label. It's a Bach set. I haven't listened to it yet. It's a very long piece of music. It's got the gold stickers, meaning good housekeeping, seal of classical music approval. Beat up record given to me by somebody on its way to the trash. Arturo Toscanini Symphony No. 3, Beethoven, NBC Symphony Orchestra. To me, these can't go to the trash. They're antiques. Keep them. Why not? Here's a cool record I got at the thrift store, but it was $5. Cello Encore, Zoltan Kocsis conducting, I think, Hungarian dudes. Mahler's Ninth Symphony. His name is not George. He doesn't have an E at the end. It's Sir Georg Schulte. Not George. Don't call him George. You sound like a rube. Mahler's Ninth Symphony, massive piece of music. Here's the conductor. Anyway, guys, that is a tiny, tiny selection of classical records that I've picked up in the last, let's say, year from thrift stores or giveaways. Classical music is the best value in thrift store records when you consider high quality pressings, high quality packaging, plastic inner sleeves, pristine condition, masterpieces of music, greatest music ever composed by greatest composers and musicians of all time. Hey, and if you don't get it yet, we'll just, you don't get classical music, that's your problem. Give it a listen. Pick up a record. For your first record, don't get into any of that weird stuff. Pick up a Bach or Beethoven or Mozart. Fifth Symphony, Ninth Symphony, Third Symphony, etc., etc. All right, guys. Happy thrift store shopping and have a great holiday. Talk to you soon.